Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that is equal parts heartbreaking, deeply inspiring, and absolutely crucial to understanding modern healthcare. We're going to explore the incredible founding story of the African Caribbean Leukemia Trust, or the ACLT. Now, this is an organization born directly out of a family's desperate fight to save their son's life. But in doing so, they ended up shining a massive spotlight on a systemic, yet often totally overlooked issue, these severe racial disparities hiding right there in our donor registries. So throughout this explainer, we'll walk you through exactly how one family defied virtually impossible odds, fundamentally changed the medical landscape in the UK, and how their work continues to save lives today. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start with Section 1, the bone marrow disparity, looking back at the landscape in the 1990s.
550. Take a second to just let that number sink in. That was the total number of registered Black and minority ethnic bone marrow donors in the entire UK back in 1996. Just 550 individuals. When you think about the vast, diverse population of the UK, having only a few hundred potential donors for an entire demographic group, that highlights a sheer, terrifying urgency. If a patient from an ethnic minority background needed a bone marrow transplant to survive something like leukemia, they were essentially looking for a needle in a haystack. But worse, it was a haystack that barely even existed. To put that into perspective, the BBC reported that for white patients at the time, the odds of finding a bone marrow match were about 1 in 5. Pretty reasonable, right? But if the patient was Black or of mixed race, those odds completely plummeted to 1 in 100,000. It's just staggering. These stark, devastating odds meant that finding a life-saving match was nearly impossible for minority patients. We're not talking about a slight disadvantage here. This was a massive systemic healthcare gap, and it was quite literally costing lives.
Which brings us to Section 2, Daniel De-Gale's fight to defy those impossible odds.
So back in 1993, at just 6 years old, Daniel was diagnosed with leukemia. By 1996, his parents, Beverly De-Gale and his stepfather, Orrin Lewis, were given the worst news. Because of that tiny donor pool we just talked about, Daniel's specific odds of finding a match were a mind-boggling 1 in 250,000. But here's the thing. Instead of giving up, they sprang into action and founded the ACLT. And their relentless campaigning actually paid off. In 1999, at Great Ormond Street Hospital, a 12-year-old Daniel made absolute history. He became the very first Black person in the UK to receive a life-saving bone marrow transplant from an unrelated donor. After that, he lived a normal life in remission for years. Tragically, he passed away in 2008 at the age of 21 from multiple organ failure due to a totally unrelated illness. But as Orrin Lewis put it, Daniel fought with tremendous courage, strength, and dignity right to the very end.
Now, you might be wondering, why were Daniel's odds so low in the first place? Well, it boils down to biology. Stem cells actually possess racially specific characteristics. For a bone marrow transplant to work, meaning for it not to be rejected by the patient's immune system, the donor generally has to be from a matching ethnic background. This meant the broader general population couldn't just step in and help Daniel. His match strictly had to come from the Black or mixed-race population. This biological reality is exactly why a highly targeted, culturally specific approach was absolutely essential for his survival. General donor drives just weren't going to cut it.
Moving on to Section 3, building the ACLT, and how they created a truly grassroots solution. The ACLT didn't waste time trying to reinvent the wheel. Instead, they tackled this problem through incredibly smart strategic partnerships. They teamed up with the Nolan Trust, which is the UK's largest bone marrow registry, to work on the Being African Caribbean campaign. They collaborated with DKMS, the world's largest stem cell donor center, and also worked directly with NHS Blood and Transplant. On top of that, they launched the annual Daniel De-Gale Blood Donation Month every single October. But perhaps most importantly, they hosted relentless, constant community registration clinics. They didn't wait for people to come to them. They took the registry directly to the communities they desperately needed to reach.
And the results were just incredible. Through all these grassroots recruitment initiatives, the ACLT successfully raised the base level of potential ethnic minority donors from those mere hundreds we saw at the beginning to tens of thousands. That is a massive triumph. They fundamentally changed the math for patients who previously had little to no hope whatsoever.
Next up is Section 4, Champions of the Cause, looking at how they amplified this critical message.
There's a fantastic quote that perfectly captures the impact they had, coming from David the Haymaker Haye, who became a patron of the charity.
Back in 2007, this is before he became the heavyweight champion of the world, David met Orin Lewis, and get this, on the actual day of the massive Ricky Hatton versus Floyd Mayweather boxing match, David stopped on his way to the Sky Studios just to attend an ACLT registration drive in West London and get himself registered. He talked about how blown away he was by the friendliness of the volunteers and by meeting the families directly affected by leukemia. He said, "I felt truly humbled, and it really wasn't a difficult decision to make in getting involved in the ACLT's very worthy cause."
And David Haye certainly wasn't alone. The charity pulled in support from everywhere. Royalty, actors, musicians, and athletes. We're talking about Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, ex-footballer Ian Wright, and actor Colin Salmon, who actually attended Daniel's funeral, which just shows the deep personal connection they built with the family. You had singers like the Sugababes and Beverly Knight, alongside football stars like John Barnes and Micah Richards, lending their voices. But it is crucial to remember that while these celebrities brought a much-needed, massive spotlight, they were really there to validate and amplify the tireless, grueling, grassroots work that Beverly, Orin, and their volunteers were grinding out on the ground every single day.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final section, Section 5, an enduring legacy, and how the fight continues today.
Obviously, work of this magnitude with such a profound national impact does not go unnoticed. For their monumental services to healthcare, both founders were rightfully honored by the Queen. Beverly received her OBE in the 2011 birthday honors, and Orin received his in the 2012 New Year honors. Orin even went on to co-chair the National BAME Transplant Alliance. And even before that, back in 2006, they won the Daily Mirror Pride of Britain Special Achievement Award. These awards really just cement their legacy as absolute pioneers in the fight for healthcare equality.
Daniel's aunt said it beautifully. This beautiful boy inspired so many of us, and we will continue to illuminate the path. And that's exactly what they're doing. The ACLT's mission is incredibly active right now. They are out there continually raising awareness for stem cell and bone marrow donation. But they've also expanded their scope. They drive blood donation recruitment, and they fiercely advocate for organ donation, specifically targeting Black, mixed race, and Asian communities. Because in those demographics, the shortfall of life-saving donors is absolutely still a pressing everyday issue.
So what does this all mean for us? For you? We've seen how the odds were originally stacked impossibly high against Daniel, how his family fought back to raise that registry from a few hundred to tens of thousands, and how the science behind stem cells means we need donors from very specific backgrounds. Listen, this isn't just history we're talking about. It's a living, breathing mission going on right now. So the question is, who will you save? Are you on the registry? You literally have the power to impact the end of this story. Let this explainer be your invitation to learn more, to get involved, and maybe, just maybe, to be that one match in 100,000 that saves a life.